So hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Frank Clark. I do a show Mondays here on Blab at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and today my guest is Lori Webb. Say hi, Lori.
Hi. Hi,
How
Frank.
are you?
And happy birthday.
Thanks, appreciate it. And happy almost birthday to you, because your birthday is the 22nd, I believe.
Correct.
Which is Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So I'm glad you're able to come on and be here with me on my birthday. And Lori is also my co-founder, co-producer of Startup Con Live, which we also just had Leo on the pre-show, and Jonathan and Zeph, who were on another show with Lori just before this. So one big happy family all together here again. So Lori is a multiple best-selling author, has 3 best-selling books on Amazon, is also an expert in the world of business and entrepreneurship with a particular focus on branding, but has also interviewed more than 1,000. What's the number? I can't remember.
Well, for the book, I specifically 300, but I've spoken to thousands of entrepreneurs.
Thousands of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So it just has incredible insights and expertise in the world of business entrepreneurship, and with a particular focus, as I said, on branding. Lori did really all the branding efforts on the Startup Con Live. I give her all kudos and credit for that. And also before that, had done the Big Blab event, which was a record-breaking event here on Blab, where she had over 22,000 viewers on a 24/7 day, 24-hour, 7-day Big Blab event. 168 hours of continuous blabbing, all about business and entrepreneurship, in conjunction with Entrepreneur Week.
Yes.
It's exhausting to do your bio because you've done so much.
That's why Leo's here to help me figure out how to not overshare. It's hard
That's
not
right.
to overshare.
Yeah, Leo,
Okay.
we got to get you on board to help us with the pitch to keep it to 30 words, right?
30 words. Yes.
So I'm excited that you're joining me here today, Lori. So I've been doing a number of shows with authors and experts in business. I'm delighted that you could be with us here today. So I always like to go back to origin stories and get people to have more of a connection with you. Like what, and I know you've done so much more before getting into the business world with modeling and acting and things like that. So I want you to take back to like your earliest days of like how you got started in business and what made you sort of gravitate toward, specializing in entrepreneurship and branding.
Well, I started off as a small wee child. I did the typical things. My mother says I came out as an entrepreneur. That's just how she sees it. And I think it's probably not that off because of the fact that I actually started, having lemonade stands. The first thing, actually, if I go to my first recollection of entrepreneurship, it was actually my brother, who you saw at Startup Con Live. He used to have a candy shop. He's 6 years older than I am. He's 4 years older than my sister. And he was the only one who was allowed to go to the candy shop by himself. So he bought the candy, then he would come back and have us buy it at, he would charge just, maybe 1 cent more or something like that. It was penny candy. So It was pretty good return.
Good margins there.
Good margins. So he started there and that's when I think of I think I got literally a taste of it with that little show, that little, show of entrepreneurial spirit and what it could do. And suddenly, wow. And you could as your business, have candy around, that kind of stuff. So that, the lemonade stand, I always did sales with Girl Scout cookies, which is not exactly entrepreneurial, but yet there were entrepreneurial aspects of it.
Yep, the sales skills.
I was always topping the sales. I loved going out. I loved talking to people. I loved kind of solving problems. I loved looking for ways to solve problems. I liked doing things like when I would sit in the dentist office or something, I would be bored. So I would start thinking of other things to do. Or, if they change the colors here, it would be a better experience for me. Like, obviously my child self wasn't speaking in those words, but if you know, we return, well, that's what was happening. I think the branding came about early on because I'm from New York City, as you know.
Yes.
But I lived outside of New York most of my life, in fact, obviously, because I've been in Copenhagen now for 30 years. I guess that really puts a real fine point on it. But I lived in the Midwest. I lived in Michigan and Indiana when I was a child. And because of that, we would travel to New York City regularly to see family. And we would get clothes. We would, you know, go shopping, school shopping in New York. And then we'd end up in the Midwest. And I would have all this New York City fashion stuff on.
Right.
You know, I was like, and people were like, what is that? What's happening?
You're
and,
like the trendy, hot young thing,
I
right?
became the trendy girl, right? Because I was into clothes. And subsequently, as I got older, I got more into clothing, like clothes and my personal brand. I started, you know, because people would say stuff. At first you don't think about it. And then people are like, oh, you always look so nice. Or, oh, you never wear the same outfit. Things like that. And suddenly you feel like, oh my gosh, I wasn't doing that with any purpose, but now I guess I have to do it.
Now it's your identity. Now you've got to be consistent with that identity. You got to follow
my
through.
Child self, right?
Yeah.
My child self talking to me. So,
and by the way, if you're viewing, thanks for joining us today here with Lori Webb, Frank Clark. If you could do us a favor and tweet this out and post it on Facebook, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Yes. Hi, I think Zeph's in the room.
Zeph's in the room. Jonathan. We got Leo's in the room. Jonathan.
Woo, woo.
Big shout out to our Startup Con Live partners, Zeph, Jonathan, and Leo.
Yes. And actually now she's left. She said she was stalking me.
And our favorite stalker, David Vaughn, is in the room.
Yes, that's so great. It's funny.
Posting our gift.
So that was.
Thank you, David.
Did I answer the question? Frank? I told you how I got started, branding and entrepreneurship.
So you were starting to go into with the clothing, and I can see how that would be like a natural transition progression because you later got into modeling. So how did that happen?
Yes.
How do you go from living all over the country, you know, to all of a sudden, you know, modeling from the Midwest?
Well, I mean, oh goodness, this is a hard story to tell and not sound totally obnoxious, but people kept asking. I was very tiny. So it really wasn't something, you know, I think most girls in the 60s, 70s, and many girls still now, I think less people are interested in becoming models as they are being pop stars now or being rocking, you know, they're going for a different thing. But a lot of women, a lot of girls growing up wanted to be models where I was, but people were asking my mother, your daughter, she's beautiful. Is she a model? And my mother was like, it's so weird. You know, my mother worked on the college campus and people would ask. So, you know, she thought, well, I guess there's something to it because people keep saying it. People keep asking. And people would say to me, and I would love to look at pictures of, you know,
headshots.
I read magazines like all the time. Fashion was my thing.
Vanity Fair and that kind of thing.
I read everything. I was obsessed with fashion back in the day. I wanted to be a fashion designer. It became that. And also I found out, well, you know what? My friends are working at McDonald's and stuff. And, you know, I could go and I didn't have to smell like a hamburger. I could work for an hour or two, do something I loved. I loved being on stage, especially. I loved, you know, interpreting. I loved moving. I ended up going to this school called Barbizon School of Modeling, which is kind of a joke in the modeling world because it's, you know, be a modeler, just look like one. And so it had some mixed connotations about it. But the problem was I was in upstate New York and I wasn't able to actually model some. The other problem, that was one problem. The other problem is I was too short. And the third problem, which you might think is a little bit weird, I was too black because there were no black models.
Yeah, there was still a lot more discrimination back then.
Well, there was one. I mean, there was Beverly Johnson, then that was it. There was really no one out there. So I went to New York City and I went to some of the big agencies, and some of them were not so nice, right, because it's a hard world, and you're just too short, and all these different things. And I was like, okay, well, that sucks. And I would get jobs because people would say, wow, she looks very, she's photogenic. She's, really good on stage, on the runway, because I had been dancing and I had the theater background as well, which I had already started doing. I did my first college production in 6th grade. So it all played together. I sang, I danced, I started moving, and it was connected to this fashion thing. And when all is said and done, we're just going to short term, just go quickly cut to the chase from this point on. I fought to be a model for years. When I went to that Barbizon School of Modeling thing, my mother said she wanted to give me my best chance. Right. So I went there. The day of graduation, I got booked for a job, and I started working there. I worked there for 3 years teaching. So I taught in New York City. I was teaching models there. I taught them on camera in 1970, 79. I was actually filming models and training them for commercials and for walking. Wow. And I was loving it. And I realized, this obviously, I'm not Naomi Campbell or any of the other supermodels, never was. But I look back now and I'm happy for it, because I actually modeled for 16 years. I worked in New York. I worked in London. I worked in Copenhagen, mainly in Copenhagen, because that's actually when my career started to kind of hit. Right. Even though you're really old as a model when you're in your late 20s, I looked so young at the time. At 22, I was headhunted. So I actually got my shot. I was offered, now I won't tell you the story, even though it's a great story. There was a very famous, he's actually a hotelier now, but he was married to Katie Ford, and I had met him at a party. And so after much talk about modeling, and I kept saying, I don't want to do it anymore. Right. He finally said, why don't you go and talk to Ford? And I said something like, I don't like Eileen. She's very mean. I don't want to model for Ford. I'm finished. I'm old. Right. And then he told me that his wife was Katie Ford, and I should actually go and talk to them. And I went over and was actually off a contract with Ford, but I moved to Copenhagen, got married. My husband wasn't real wild about that, and I stopped for a little while, and then I started up again. So I modeled until my oldest son was born. That was 19 years ago. And have done.
I want to draw like a metaphorical connection here, because I think this is really, really important. Because of the work that you did, it's easier for me to see the segue now from modeling to business and entrepreneurship.
Branding.
Essentially, what you were saying, and again, in the world of modeling, you've got to have a thick skin. You've got to be able to overcome rejection. You've got to keep on going, because it's even more personal than entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, don't get me wrong, is extremely personal, because this is your baby. You're building this creation, and then you're going out to people to try and enroll customers or investors or what have you, and they reject you, and it's hard not to take it personally. But when you're modeling or acting, okay, they're rejecting you specifically. So that's got to be incredibly difficult to deal with as a young person. And again, we all come up different paths or whatever, but it's hard enough as a young person coming out of your teen years into your 20s to face the world and try and come into your own as your identity, who you are. But then you go into a business world of modeling or acting, where rejection is the name of the game. And it's only that 0.5% or 2% that actually make it into successful careers. So kudos to you to not only sticking it out, but making it work, because I'm sure that built tremendous resourcefulness and stick-to-itiveness and self-esteem that you're able to make it in such a tough industry.
Oh, thank you. Well, make it and make it. There's a lot in that industry, but I think the key thing, and the funny thing, something that's relevant in that story is also, that's what led to my first business. My first business in Copenhagen I was an image consultant.
Perfect.
I had the first image consultancy in Copenhagen. I was actually working as a model at the time. I was a freelancer at that time.
Right.
And I was working with a lot of the top models in Scandinavia. I did all the big shows. I was choreographing. I had my hands in everything. I had access to the top photographers and stylists. And so I thought, you know what? And at this time, this is something that, sorry, people, this is going to be a little bit tricky, but the Danish people, the Scandinavians, are actually well known for being beautiful. And they are. I mean, they really are. It's a beautiful race of people. So I was watching these models when I first arrived in Copenhagen. I was so excited to see the show. I thought, now this is going to be, I was in New York, but wow, these are going to be, some really amazing models. Because there have been some great models to come out of Scandinavia. But when I started seeing them, it was beautiful, beautiful women. And then the music started and it was cows on parade. They were clunking it up. I was like, oh my Lord, help me. So I started.
I love that.
So
hashtag cows on parade.
So I was like, oh my goodness, you got to be kidding me. This is like total country talk. Like,
they didn't know how to walk. They didn't know how to move or carry themselves.
No, they didn't. And that's how I started kind of getting into it. It's a different game now. And they definitely, have upped the game. It's like Fashion Week is coming up and the shows are much better and the quality is much higher and everything. But at the time I was shocked. I couldn't even believe it because I knew people from, the suburbs who were better models, not more beautiful, but better, so that speaks also to the intricacies. Like I got branding, like when I talk about branding, it's different. I coined this thing called thorough branding because at this stage in my life, at almost 53, I have been a disc jockey. I've been a model. I've been an actress. I have been in IT, doing tech, doing websites, writing books. So I have every modality, that I've actually had to work with how you craft a message. Right. And so that's how I put it together, because when you're modeling or acting or music or anything, it's how you're bringing your message to fore, how you're connecting with people, but it's also how you look, how your body, right, how you hold yourself, all of these different things. And that's some of the things that I was doing. I was training at that time. I was working with models because, as you said, it's really difficult when you're 15 years old. And, right, exactly. And this is like real life story. I was working with some of the top models. They were on covers of bigger models than I ever was. They were on the cover of Vogue. They were doing spreads in Milan. I'm just, I was told I'm technically too short to model. So it's amazing that I even got to be in the game, and especially as long as I was. But they were getting sent out, and they're 15 years old, and there's no chaperone, and there's no people, and there's a lot of people interested in taking advantage of a young, pretty, kind of insecure girl. Because also you get told, and here's a true story that maybe people will find interesting. I went to a go-see. That's when you're going for a job. I went to a go-see, and clearly, because I'm in Scandinavia, and I walked in, and the people were like shocked. They clearly did not expect this to walk.
They were blown away by your beauty.
They didn't expect me to be blessed. Oh yeah, that would be nice. Thank you, Frank. Wait, let's give him some props for that one. But no, that was not the case, and it was clear that was not the case. So I left, and I was like heartbroken, like, right, oh my God, this whole thing, and they did, I can't do this, like they're not even interested. And then the next day I get a call, and the person who had sent me out, the agent says, but Lori, it's not. I said, no, they don't want me. I'm not, like, this is Scandinavia, and I'm not, like, there's nobody in that there. I'm not really representing, right, the market. The marketplace. And so they're like, no, they're looking for a black model for this one. Okay. So I show up, and they look at me, and they clearly didn't expect all of this. They say, oh, I'm sorry, you're not black enough. So That is my point.
Yeah.
That is what modeling is. You will go somewhere. People have said also, your eyes are too close together. Your eyes are too far apart. They will, like, you're the same person. And this is something that I learned, and this is good, relevant for anybody. It doesn't matter if you're modeling or whatever. You have to understand it's about matching. Like, if somebody has in their mind that this is the kind of coach I'm looking for, and you show up, there's nothing wrong with you. You just might not be what they
managing other people's expectations, and that's so important in entrepreneurship. And I can't tell you how. I mean, I did thousands of meetings with investors, and I'd go to one meeting and they'd say, "Well, no, you're too early stage for us." And then I'd go the same day to another meeting and say, "No, you're way too late stage for us." It's like, how can that be? How can we way too early and way too late in the same day?
Exactly. And that's how you have to, like, divorce yourself from that situation when you're going for a role as an actress, as a, like, okay, you were pitching for funds, but in everybody's everyday, if you're looking for clients,
right?
Like, it's, again, you have to see it as, there are natural matches, and you might go in to work with somebody and they just might not be your match, or you might not be their match. And so you can't take it. That's where, when people say, don't take it personal, it's hard, especially if you're a solo entrepreneur and you've worked on writing a book, or you've worked on a program and you think it's great, or you've done your designs and you show it to people and they're just like, that's ugly. What do you mean? Or, it's all about understanding that you got to go and you got to do your best. And if you are fortunate enough to be aligned, like, find where are your people?
Where's your audience? Where are the people who want you?
Exactly. And that's where this personal branding really comes into play, where this overall branding comes into play, because you don't, wow, I feel like I'm quoting my brother all the time, but in the
smart brother, so not a bad thing to do there. You got a very smart brother.
Thank you. But he said something that I had never heard him say before. We'd never had a conversation like that. And he said, don't try to boil the ocean. Now, I don't know that that's actually, I think he said it. I don't know if he said it because somebody else said it, but I'd never heard it before, but it made sense. Don't boil the ocean. Maybe it's a popular phrase that I just missed.
But you get it in one. It's a great quote.
Yeah. And that idea of not trying to be all things to all people, or not trying to do all these different, trying to appeal to everything or tackle everything at once, but focusing on being specifically who you are and doing the things that are specifically unique to you, so that you will attract people to you, and that you will, instead of trying to be, we were just talking about live streaming and how you can make this really great connection. But if we broaden it out and talk social media, people are trying to be on every social media platform, trying to really chase after it and do different things. That might not be the platform for you. And so you don't want to overly spend time, because it takes your energy. Right. And it's hard if you go on a platform that doesn't work for you. And there could be many reasons, like right now, with Mevi coming out, and people jumping on Mevi, and like you were saying, people are getting good feedback on it. However, it's not everybody's platform. Everybody doesn't need to be there just because it's new. There are some advantages to being there.
I mean, Vine was new for a while,
Snapchat,
and there's a lot of people who made a huge name for themselves on Vine with 6-second videos with like optical illusions and magic tricks and photoshopping and stuff to create, like if you've ever seen that guy who does a photocopy of a rabbit and then pulls a live rabbit out of the photocopy machine. It's like cool things that you can do with with Vine. And if that's your talent and whatever, you'll find your audience there if the medium works for you. But, like Leo asks, how do you find the right people? Well, you got to find the right platform. I was just reading an article, like, how do you know if you're, you found your calling? It's like, if what you're doing, you love it so much that the time just like goes, because you're just like so involved with that. I don't care whether it's crocheting or you're live streaming or you're modeling or whatever it is, where it's just like, oh my gosh, I was like, I had all these things to do, but I was just so busy doing this, and I was really enjoying what I was doing when I was doing this, that I didn't have time to do all those other things that I thought I should have been doing. That's, how you find like your calling. And when you find your calling in your platform, like, let's say it's Blab, you're going to find the right people, or they're going to find you. You go someplace where people can find you. I mean,
shine your light brightly.
So New York City,
right? You're like a lighthouse.
Yeah, we're both from New York City, right? Or have lived in New York City. In New York City, there's all kinds of, let's pick musicians, okay? So there's musicians who go there, like Bob Dylan went there in 1959 from Minnesota trying to make his way, and he started showing up at coffee houses and made the right connections, and next thing you know, he's got an album contract, and next thing you know, he's the biggest influence on popular music of the 20th century, pretty much. From his songwriting and becoming well known, and he influenced everybody from the Beatles to the Doors and Jimi Hendrix all the way down. So, but then you got your other people who go down in New York City and they show up in the coffee houses and they don't get any other traction, but maybe they find out that they really love the idea of running these shows, and they become a manager of a coffee house. Or somebody else decides that it's like they're going to use all these connections and they're going to go become a record producer. So go try different things. Go show up at the coffee house. So, a lot of musicians in New York City show up on subway platforms. Like there was a famous video that went around of this. It was like a kid from Harlem, and he couldn't afford drums, but he just loved drumming so much, and he had gotten drumsticks, but his family couldn't afford drums, so he got those pickle barrels. But he figured out how to drum and became extremely good at drumming just on these pickle barrels. And he would go out on the subway platforms, and somebody videoed him or whatever, and he got to be known, and it blew up. All of a sudden, there's these kids all over New York getting out pickle barrels and learning how to drum on pickle barrels. And he was like the kid who started it or whatever, right? So if you find what you love and you go do that, you're going to find your platform. And eventually, if you're really good at it, and you stick with it, you're going to get noticed. I think that's kind of like the story that's coming through in your story.
Well, yeah, I think that, and trying some different things also helps, right? Because you're kind of cross-pollinating. So some things, everything kind of informs the other. And when it comes to platforms, because
you keep learning. You try different things, and you get cross-contextual learning. Yeah.
And you'll have some people who loved you on one platform and want to join you in the next, right? So it's you're not starting from square. When I joined Blab, I already had some people, because you can, that's a good platform. I think when you're allowed to integrate other people who are from other platforms, who do you know on this platform? Peach, have you heard about this platform called Peach?
I have not, no.
There's another platform. It's called Peach, and people are talking about that. I jumped on Peach immediately, checking it out.
Is it live streaming video?
I like to check stuff out. It's I'm actually not really sure what it's about, because I didn't get to square one with it, because they wanted me. To me, it seemed like it was a platform that wanted to build off of me inviting everyone to their platform, because it starts off and you have nobody there with you. Right. So you don't jump in with a community. That's the other thing for Blab. You don't have to know anybody. You can just come, open up your Blab, and somebody will show up. Right. I mean, the first time I showed up, okay, I knew some people, but I think people who, let's say they've been living in Siberia and they suddenly jump on Blab. People will be scanning Blab to see people. Whereas if it's a new platform and there's no way for you to know anybody, and then you have to invite people, then I don't want to go live stream, or I guess it must be, because otherwise I'd be talking to, right? I don't want to just talk to nobody, and I don't want to invite all of my friends. Okay, thanks, Lori. Now it's another distraction.
Right, exactly.
So I tabled it. I mean, it's on my phone, and I'm like, maybe something will happen, but right now I'm busy with all these other things. So I think that's something to be said about how, it didn't resonate with me.
Yeah, exactly.
I met a girl who there was a girl on on Twitter, and she had actually asked about Peach, and I who else is on Peach? So I thought, oh, well, that I went back to look and say, oh, maybe, I can be friends with her. She has like 250,000 people, 250,000 people. That's what it's called, not 250,000. 250,000 people on Twitter, so she has a big following. So she probably knows a lot of people, and she's younger, so she probably doesn't have a problem with just inviting people in. But I have a different group. So you have to also, who are you?
Right.
Where are you aiming? What side of your personality are you interested in this portraying in this profile? Like, what are you trying to accomplish?
What image are you presenting to the world to draw from what you were talking about as an image consultant? Yeah. Like, what image, what persona, what personality are you providing to the world that's going to offer and create value such that people are going to want to follow you and learn from you and so forth?
And keeping in mind that while there might be some people who create image as a facade, I mean, technically image is a facade, but I think of it, it's the correct facade for you. It's not you pretending to be somebody you're not.
Right.
I'm not promoting that, just so people know. So anyway,
you want to be. I hesitate to say the word because I know David's going to jump on me.
No, are you going to say authentic? No.
Well, you want to be, but what we were talking about in the other room is you want to be real. Okay, forget about it.
Yeah.
You want to be real. You want to be who you are, not just like, oh, this authenticity is like the greatest thing. So let me see how I can fake being authentic now.
Yes. Well, actually, and I've said it a few times, and so please, I hope you're not going to throw up now when I say it. But Joe Pine, who wrote the book Authenticity, when I met him and authenticity to an extended degree, he was saying, well, the thing is, Lori, it's like, this is the problem with authenticity, is that if somebody comes up to you, like, imagine this happening, and people like, hi, my name's Lori. Your name's Frank? Well, Frank, I just want you to know I'm the most authentic person you are ever going to meet. I'm all about the authenticity. I'm all about, being real. And then you hear, like, the other thing that people say a lot is, if I must be truthful, which implies that they're lying.
Right.
Like, so that's a tricky thing to say.
Can I be perfectly honest with you?
People don't say that, to be perfectly honest. Yes.
What do you usually?
Right. Thank you, you big liar. But if people like, that's what's happening now. Like, he said that years ago, but that's kind of what people are saying when they're walking around talking about being authentic.
Right.
Like, it's one thing to talk about authenticity and aspiring to be authentic. But if you say, I'm authentic, even though I'm trying to tap into my authentic self, it just sounds like there's
I mean, like, the hair on the back of my neck was going up when you started to say, I'm the most authentic person you ever hear. It's like my eyes start to roll. It's like, oh, geez, here we go. There's a sales pitch coming after this for sure.
Exactly. I'm so authentic. I'm so, real. But anyway, hey, Zeph, are you here? Are Seth and Jonathan and Leo
Jonathan
still in
is
the
still
room?
in. Leo's still in. I think Zeph jumped off.
Oh, no. Oh, she had to leave. Oh, no. That was bad.
You had a question for...
Okay, Jonathan.
She's probably getting ready for her show, which starts in another 19 minutes.
She is. Yeah, see, I thought she had 3:00 and then she said that, but oh, goodness. Jonathan and Leo, are you guys on? Can you jump in for a minute? Can we unlock the seats for a minute?
Because times
or wait, you know what? I'm sorry, Frank. I just kind of got nervous about the time, but you might have had a plan.
No, we've got 19 minutes.
Okay, did you have a plan? Is that
I have a plan. What I was going to segue now from like your first business as an image consultant, how then you segued over to the other businesses and then interviewing entrepreneurs to write your books. So that's kind of the direction I was going.
Okay, it's funny because Gail says, Lori just blabbed Jack. Okay, so
just so you know, what I'm trying to do here is bring out the best of you to show the audience who's watching like what you're all about, and why they should connect with you. So if you want to blab jacket to Leo or Zeph, I'll let you do that. But I know that's part of who you are. Yeah. You're a very giving person, and you're trying to bring other people into it or whatever. But I'm trying to bring out like the best of you and get an understanding of like who you are, what you're all about, and how you came to be that way.
Well, gosh, Frank, I wish you had told me that in the beginning of the show, that you were going to bring out the best of me, so I could have really brought my authentic self, my authentically
You're
great
doing
self.
great.
No. Okay. Well,
So,
how did I
so
end
going
up?
back, so, you mentioned that your first business was as an image consultant.
Yes.
How did you then move into some of the other businesses and into writing books from your work as an image consultant? Because obviously, you did a lot of different things.
Well, it's because my image consulting business crashed and burned.
That's a great lesson.
It's a great lesson. It was a very scary, expensive, and nightmare of a lesson.
Yeah. I think anybody who's an entrepreneur can appreciate and connect to that. We've all had failures. Yes,
and the thing is that it was well thought out. It was, the idea about it was well thought out. It should have worked, but yet it shouldn't have worked, because what I was told later from some of the models I was working with is the agencies, like I was going to the agencies, I was actually niching down, which is something that is not normal in my DNA. Like, to just niche down, normally I'm like, serve all people, or would have been at least then.
Right.
I like to look into the options, but I was thinking, I'm going to focus on fashion. We'll start with the fashion world, because if we get people, like, fashion is the ultimate of image, right? Of creating images. So if models are coming to us, if we're working with models and helping build their brands before everyone was talking, then we can work with business people and work with, kind of everybody, right? But the problem with that is Copenhagen has Denmark has 5 million people. At that time, they had 5 million people, 1 million people in Copenhagen. Market was way too small. Like, the amount of models, like, you don't build a business off of that niche of business. Like, there were just not enough models who would be able to come. So that was faulty thinking. The agencies did not want me to do this. They were saying maybe next month, it's a great idea. The photographers, all the people who were working with me, had a problem with, they liked the idea, but at the end of the day, it was going to cost them money, because if the models were better, they were going to charge them more. The agencies didn't want me to have my hands in their models, because would you want to be represented by someone who works in the industry, or and doesn't actually know your pain, or somebody who actually knows the industry and actually has walked beside you, has helped you behind stage? They were worried I was going to start an agency, which I still haven't. Right. So they were wrong. I could have told them that.
People are so easily threatened in business, especially.
Yeah. So it was a challenge. And there were other things. There was, like, back to branding again. I actually still have some of my letterhead, and it was called Webb. So it was my name. So that was fortunate. But I spent like, $1,500 on my brand, on my identity for my paper. I ordered it from England. I wanted recycled paper, which at this point, I can also see the faultiness of that thinking. I was getting it from England, shipped over to Denmark. It was beautiful. It's beautiful paper, really nice, and all this other stuff. So I've always been attached to these details, so that it makes sense that I would be interested in the branding and the entrepreneurial spirit that I talked about earlier that has always kind of been with me. So when that didn't work, I did some other things. I started all kinds of different things. I actually catered. I did food. I'm a foodie. I had Denmark's also first American brunch through a friend. I did a pop-up breakfast. Nice. So all of these things are rolling out into, I was trying
to figure out what works best for you, what you're resonating with, and where you can, like, bring your special brilliance to the market, and people are going to pay you for it.
Exactly. And I was doing, like, this being said, I made money in these things. Like, I made money in all the things that I did, but there's a difference between making some money. Like, you have to make, for a business, right? You have to make consistent money, and you have to, like, I was more hobby businessing it, right? I can see now, looking back, it all roads led to now, but there were there were a lot of, false steps, or I ended up doing other things and teaching and working for other people. And I was fascinated by the fact that in 2006, 2007, I was just reading so much. Like, we both read a lot of books about entrepreneurship and just in general, probably. And I sort of compared it with that modeling background. Like, oh my goodness, there was actually a jump in there. Sorry, there's something kind of critical I have to put in there. That's when I went to school in 2000. I started my IT degree, my graduate degree. And from 2000, I was pregnant when I started. So I ended up actually spending 4 years doing this. And what happened was I ended up doing a lot of speeches and ended up in the information technology space. And I was one of the few women and almost always the only Black person on stage. I mean, I was on stages in different parts of the world doing presentations on web design. I did a presentation which actually sums it all up, and it was putting the worldwide back into the web because there was just not enough diversity. So all of those things led me to, in 2007, I was reading more books and I was seeing a very huge lack of diversity in entrepreneurs being represented. And when I'm talking about diversity, it's not black-white issue. There weren't, I know so many brilliant entrepreneurs from different parts of the world because I've been traveling around the world. I had been going to conferences. I had been, trying out products. I was doing trend spotting. So I was seeing really great things. And I was thinking, you see this conference or you see this film, like this footage, and you're not hearing about any of these people. Like, you rarely hear about the great Danish entrepreneurs. Like, how many Danish entrepreneurs can you think of?
None.
Okay. How many, so when you think of like big products, as an example, probably this is like, do you use anything like Skype?
Yeah.
Danish.
Interesting.
One of the founders was Danish. Podio?
I'm using it now because of Zeph.
Danish.
Interesting.
3 Signals, 37 Signals. Danish. Like where they did lots of different things. But anyway, so there are a lot of people, and you don't realize that, right? And I can go on. I can tell you people from different parts of the world. So I started
most people are so
interviewing them.
Ethnocentric in America that you know.
It's a big country.
It's a big country in the United States. People just think that everything was invented here, right?
Yeah, that is kind of an assumption.
It's a bad assumption, but it's a very, kind of like Americans have kind of like a blind spot for the rest of the world, and I mean, I've seen it,
and it's hard. But this actually is a kind of, for me, was a good thing because I was experiencing these things, and what I did was, I was working for, I went to a conference for entrepreneurship here in Denmark, and it was like same old, like they were focusing on the Danish culture and talking about different Danish entrepreneurs. And, everybody wanted to be Steve Jobs, still, like all over the world, everybody wanted to be Steve Jobs, as like the quintessential entrepreneur. Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, like is in terms of like the international, those were the ones you always heard of. Right. Every time you saw an article, it was referenced or something. Yeah. And I thought, you know what, they're like a visual popped in my head. Like all of these one big, huge figure. If you imagine there's somebody standing there and the light is coming from here and there's a shadow, and all of those people the people who are making up the shadow are what I'm calling the real entrepreneurs. Like there's always been entrepreneurs, and I'm a nerd and I like to read history and or just kind of looking into all these different things. And I thought, why in 2007, 2008 is it becoming a thing to be an entrepreneur? It's always been. I mean, the person that you buy coffee from, I mean, the street vendors in New York City, all of the people, I mean, there's entrepreneurs everywhere. United States was built by entrepreneurs.
Sure, absolutely.
Right? So it depends on how you're like tweaking it. And then I thought, I want people like, these are stories that are amazing. When I was talking to people about how they started their business, I want to write a book. And because actually the branding thing was still really taking heavy hold on me, I wanted to do a book. My plan was I was going to do a beautiful coffee table book with 20 entrepreneurs, and it was going to be beautiful. It was going to be well photographed, and it was just going to be an experience. I had the tech background, so as that grew, more than 20 started showing up. I had conceived it. It was going to be the first multimedia book. It was going to have embedded QR. It was going to have QR codes that were embedded. This is 2007, mind you. So people didn't know what I was talking about. Yeah, great. Except for if they were in Japan, where it was created. And I was going to have all these different things involved. And what happened was it resonated with people, and it became kind of a movement. So people had people that I should interview, and I was interviewing everybody. So I did a few in 2010. I mean, I was on stages, I was talking about it, I was going to different events. People were really interested. I ended up interviewing, at this point, in this stage in the game, some of the world leaders of the 20th century and the 21st century.
So who are some of the people
names
that you interviewed that people would know and resonate with? So,
okay. Well, if I talk, I'll start with maybe the thought leaders. The thought leaders, they are people who I wanted to start with that because it was people who influenced my thinking. It was the context. And so to give people a context as to why I was interviewing these people and why, diversity was important, or things that I thought were important. Right. If I ruled the world and I had my own school of entrepreneurship, these are things that I think in the 21st century people should be considering. So I interviewed Michael Gerber because Michael Gerber is Mr. Entrepreneurship. I interviewed
author of the E-Myth, for the people who don't know.
Hofstede. Yes. Sorry, E-Myth and E-Myth Revisited. Actually, I think E-Myth Revisited was even bigger for him. And he's written 30-something. I don't actually know how many books he's written at this point. It's funny because I have this. Michael gave me this. It's The World for his origins. He and his wife, and he gave it to me when I was in New York.
Oh, very nice.
Anyway, but I interviewed Geert Hofstede, who is he is the man who created cultural dimensions. He interviewed hundreds of people within IBM and found that there were some differentiations between cultures. So for just a real quick example, masculine culture or feminine culture, not about men and women, but it means, like, for example, Denmark is a feminine country. The Scandinavian countries are feminine. So it doesn't matter whether it's men or women who take paternity, maternity leave, or who takes care of the kids, who does the domestic, it's not a alpha male society. Right. In the States, we're higher on that ranking. So I spoke to him because I thought cross-culture was important. The guy who talks about communities of practice. Oh, I can't think of his name. Etienne Werner, who is Swiss, and he lives in the States. And he says that communities of practice are essentially that you can have more in common with someone who does the same thing that you do. So if you're interested in entrepreneurship, you and I might have more in common than you have with your neighbor who's in America, living in America.
Well, I know you and I have a lot more in common than I do with a lot of my neighbors.
Right. Okay. And I happen to be American, but I'm saying somebody like people from different countries, and so and I'm notorious for chasing people down and being like stalker, some of these people. I mean, Joe Pine, who I've mentioned a lot. I flew as soon as I found out he was going to be an astronaut. I flew to meet him. I found out that Etienne was going to be in Copenhagen, and I need to get in contact with you. I want to interview you. This was actually my book. I wanted to just talk to him because of my studies.
Like Simon Sinek, you mentioned that you interviewed for Start With Why.
Simon.
A lot of people know him from his TED Talk.
Exactly. Yeah.
For the book, obviously.
Of course. Simon, when the book first came out, Gary Vaynerchuk.
Gary V. Yep. Everybody in social media knows Gary V. Gary Vaynerchuk.
So I flew to London to interview Gary V. Oh goodness, there's some more. There's like big, like.
It's hard. I know. It's like, you know, when you've interviewed hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs, it's hard to remember like what were the.
Lewis Howes, who was Mr. LinkedIn, who became Mr. School of Greatness. Amy Porterfield, who wrote the book on Facebook. I'm just trying to think of social media people that I interviewed. Michael Hewitt.
Edward Six Thinking Hats.
Who created Six Thinking Hats.
What I want to transition, because I noticed we're running out of time here. It's 1:58. I want to take people through kind of like, you know, a couple of things. Number one, the books and where they can find out about your books, the 3 books that you've already have on Amazon. So do you have the links that you could post on those?
I'll just go to the easiest, and that's going to my author page.
So if you could post that up so that people can get in touch with you and find out about the books that you've written and buy the books and learn more about, you know, what Lori's done. And also, if you could post also how people can connect with you and follow you, your website. I think it's lisamariewebb.com.
Lori.
Looking at Lisa and LoriMarieWebb.com.
Lori.
I said it right. Okay.
Yeah, that was right.
I thought I mixed up World Wide Web. I'm like, wait a minute. I just...
Yeah. I'm actually going to the entrepreneurial profile site, which is the site that's the books are under. That's the name, the series, and everything. That's going to be going up. I'm going to be updating it, and then you'll be able to see other things on that. But for right now,
so if you could put those links so that people can find out more about you and what you do, and then if you could just give us some of your insights, things that you learned from doing the Big Blab event and Startup Con Live, and how that's going to roll over into what you're going to be doing in 2016.
Okay. Wow. These are all like kind of separate blabs.
In just 30 seconds or less.
The Big Blab event is in direct correlation to that. I did all these interviews for the book
sense.
that started off as a book about entrepreneurship. I was still into the startup scene, the entrepreneurship scene, from all different levels, teaching it at the university level, teaching it to kids, doing a pitch coach, mentoring, all kinds of things, from, you know, the hospitals, like, you know, medical people to food people, all kinds.
Right, sharing with them your experience of being an entrepreneur, the lessons that you learned to help them, you know, with their.
And I have some certifications and things that are specific to different things. And I had mentioned earlier, I was working in 2008. I actually was working at the premier entrepreneur, like it was called Startup Company, and they actually were the top deliverer of entrepreneurial education in Denmark at the time. I was hired actually to help my boss move to New York and start working in the United States. And we did some conferences and got their name out there and do it. Now they've kind of transitioned and they're doing something different. Well, they're actually connected, but they're in a new brand and everything. But the point is that Global Entrepreneurship Week was something I had always been involved in. And so that's what the Big Blab was about. I found out through the interviews that entrepreneurs needed support. So to support them, it would be an idea, something I had a vision of doing for many years, and that was creating an entrepreneurial hotline. The Big Blab was actually supposed to be like a hotline. So 24/7, 7 days. The slogan was, you know, because entrepreneurs work 24 hours a day for 1 week in November, so will we, right? So we would be live helping them. Didn't matter where you were from the world. You could just jump on. And so it wasn't to just create 168 hours of content. It was so that people, you know, if you're available, you could just jump on and then you could go, and that might be the only show. But if you know, were struggling, or you just wanted to hear about how, you know, some aspect of business, you could come and listen to people. You would see people just like you. You would hear people who weren't like you, but who could inspire you to do some other things. So it was doing that. Also taking up the challenge that, people said it couldn't be done.
Right.
So I did it. And
entrepreneurs hear that all the time. Entrepreneurs hear that all the time. You'll never succeed. It'll never work. You'll never do it. Right?
You can never do it until it's done. That's the whole thing.
I like to tell entrepreneurs, once you've done the impossible 3 or 4 times, you start to believe nothing's impossible. But you first got to go out and do it.
Yeah. Well, it's some people say, I'm possible instead of impossible.
Yeah, I like that.
So
it's
a combination.
That's believe in yourself and identify with yourself as an entrepreneur who can make miracles happen, because you're going to have to make miracles happen, especially psychologically, to overcome all the negativity out there of people who are going to reject you or tell you it's not possible, because they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting that they could never do it. And that's kind of where that rejections are coming from, is like, ooh, I can never do that, so you can't succeed.
Exactly. I'm so glad you said that, because this is the thing that really makes me crazy. And I have my own little lexicon, and one of them, like realistic, the word realistic,
right,
makes me insane. It makes me insane because most of the time it is not used correctly.
No, people say I'm being realistic to mean they're being pessimistic.
Well, yeah, or I don't know if it's what they mean, but that's what they're doing. Or they're saying essentially realistic to me is people, it's used too often to manipulate somebody else. Because if I say realistic, I'm implying that you are crazy. You can't do
right. You're being unrealistic.
We need to be realistic. You need to it means you need to be smaller is what people are saying. You need to be status quo.
Exactly.
You need to be status quo. Now, it's another thing if I say, in my own words, well, if I'm being realistic, I'm weighing my own, like if someone's talking about their own measurement of what they can do, I'm not saying it's right, because I could say if I'm being realistic and actually be faulty in my thinking and I can do more than I think I can, but it's not being used to manipulate me. It's right. Just, it's because so many people, because they can't do something. There's like a quote on, if you get out of the way of the people who are like, if you think something's unrealistic or impossible, then get out of the way for people who
are actually making things happen. Yeah.
Who are making it possible.
Yeah. And it's not just people who want to manipulate you to get you to stop doing what you're doing, but there's also people who are trying to manipulate you in a negotiation. For example, if you're raising money, and then people say, oh, you're being unrealistic about your valuation. It's because I want a cheaper valuation. Never mind that other people are already paying that valuation. I want a discount, so you're being unrealistic, right? So I'm trying to manipulate you into lowering your price and your value so that I can get a better deal. So it's not that really you're being unrealistic. It's that I want a better deal. But I'm not going to tell you that. I'm just going to tell you you're crazy.
Well, people just use a blanket statement. Yeah. And the thing is that people can also be, in terms of realistic, you can also be unintentionally, like people with their best intentions just don't want you to get hurt, right? Family members who want you to be realistic because they want you to, and then it means safe.
Yeah,
we want you to be safe.
Exactly.
Right.
So, but I love the quote. A ship is safest in the harbor, but that's not what ships were built for.
Right. Oh, that's a great one. That's a great one.
Yeah. So, and that's how I feel about entrepreneurship. You got to get out there and you got to throw your lot out against the winds and the storms and the seas and see what happens, because that's going to help determine what you're made of. And until you go out there and do it, you're just not going to know. There was another metaphor. I was watching, I think, a video last week about, I know what it was. It was Steve Harvey doing Family Feud. And Jonathan was talking about this in his blab, but he's talking about, your parachute is your gifts, and if you're standing on the edge of a cliff, with your parachute at the red, okay, the parachute's not going to open until you jump, but you have to jump first for the parachute to open.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, what if the parachute doesn't open? Well, if you never jump, it never will. So you're never going to understand what your gifts are and what you could have contributed. So until you make that leap, until you make that jump, your parachute is never going to open by itself. You got to make that leap to see what is possible. which I thought was a great movie.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Yes, exactly. So I don't know how much time you have. I'm happy to continue the conversation. I want to just point out to people again, Lori's posted the links on how to get in touch with her, her book site at amazon.com/author/Lori Webb. And you can get in touch with
my own book site.
Her own book site. And you can get in touch with her through her website at www.lorimariewebb.com. That's web with 2 B's for those of you who can't see it in the chat or watching on replay. And any kind of closing thoughts? And I want to open the seat also for anybody who's got Q&A. But first, any closing thoughts before I stop the recording?
I'll just say thank you. Thank you for having me, Frank. And it was nice talking to you.
All right. Great talking to you as well. Thank you so much for being on today. I'm going to stop the recording and pause the recording here in a second. I also want to invite if anybody wanted to get on, ask a question, or if Leo, you want to come in and say hello as well. And I also want to point out I'm going to be doing another show next Monday, 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to have Mike Lair talking about strategies for communication in business, for communication challenges in business. So it's Mike Lair, Lehr. I'm going to post that now. And I am going to pause the recording. And thanks again, everybody.
Great.